When was the last time you visited a cemetery? And in Halloween week, we'll see a lot of graves and other images that are decorating houses and yards, etc. But there's stories behind. If you go to a real cemetery, there's stories behind it. And we had a really interesting adventure in Argentina, and I'd love to share that with you today on the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast. This is a place that's unique because we really have a passion for those who serve at all levels of education. We love the fact that they stand in the gap for others. They're there and doing the hard work to try to inspire and to cajole and to prod and to do what it takes to not only to raise students and to help students grow, but also the people around them and even the people around us. And, it's a constant growing season. And that's the challenge and the opportunity and the privilege of those who serve in these different roles that are required for schools to succeed. We've got to have teachers and staff members and people who take care of the facilities, and sometimes we have food services and the business office and sometimes we have schools we have areas that have they do communications and marketing and admissions and. There's so many different roles that are part of schools, and it is hard work, and we're thankful that you are able to be there. You've answered the call, and you want to be a part of the lives of other people to provide a pathway forward for them, because educators, we get to really elevate the pathway for others, and that's a noble calling, and it makes a difference in so many lives. We had a privilege to speak into the lives of some educators. We were down in doing a training program on the habits of growing trust. We were working with some international school leaders at a conference down in Buenos Aires, Argentina. That was our first venture there to Argentina and some of our work, and it was really fascinating to kind of see the things that they were working through and the challenges that they had and what they saw on the horizon. And as we were working through, of course, a lot of the challenges they're dealing with are true for schools in all parts of the world, trying to overcome some of the challenges of culture and changing curriculum and technology and some expectations and regulation and ... right? School happens. Schools are complex, and so they're working through that. But one of the things that we did while we were there is we had a chance to take a journey around the city, and we were kind of looking at some of the highlights. Of course, it's Buenos Aires is a very large city, and we it would be impossible just in a 5-day journey to come close to even seeing a little bit of that city. But we were able to take advantage of some things that were near us. And one of the things that we went to visit was La Recoleta Cemetery. It's a cemetery that has just these very unusual grave markers and really testaments to the people who are buried there, and they're really massive. There's a lot in that cemetery. It's actually a very popular tourist attraction. You have to pay to go in. I don't know that I've ever paid to go into a cemetery before, but we did, and because we'd heard so much about it. Of course, there's people who are buried there, like Eva Perón, Evita from the story there, and then of course other military leaders and Nobel Prize winners and lots of heroes from the country of Argentina are there and celebrated. It was interesting because as we were walking through all these large decorated tombs and our weekly encouragement for educators, we actually included some of the pictures from that. And it was fascinating to see. We were admiring all the unique architecture of each one and wondering how and why the decisions were made to to see or to create what was there. What were they thinking, right? What was going on? And we didn't know. So we were kind of making up the narrative, right? And so, it was interesting. And of course, those stories were important, right? The stories we literally tell, the stories that we tell literally make the world. If you want to change the world, you need to change your story. This truth applies both to individuals and institutions. It's a great line by Michael Margolis. And because it's true, right? The stories we tell literally make the world. They make our perception, what we see and how we interpret things, and from the limited standpoint that we have. And so that was an interesting thing for us as we were going through. We watched as large groups of visitors. They were meandering through. I mean, there were you have to have a map literally to navigate the cemetery. And as they walk through this labyrinth of pathways, many of them were listening to a Spanish-speaking guide who was telling them all the stories, the history and what happened to these people and what they did in their lives, and of course, in a lot of our journeys, this often happens where I wish that I had paid more attention and worked harder in Spanish class or in language class, right? Because I couldn't understand. I mean, as we would get into cabs or Ubers or other things there in the city and interact with people, they would say, do you speak Spanish? And I'd be like, un poquito, right? Just a little bit. I can understand a few words. I can find the bathroom most likely, and I can say thank you and hello, but that's pretty much the limit. So, so I would say that they would say, well, my English isn't good. And so, well, it's better than my Spanish, and it's just part of the adventure of getting around in a foreign city, but. We had a great time, but as we were doing that, right, we could see that the other people were really intrigued by the stories they were hearing in their language, but we, of course, couldn't understand it. And our interest and energy was fading. It was actually starting to fade fast. We'd been there for a little while, and I was like, I think we're done. But as we turned to leave, an interesting thing happened. Suddenly, off in the distance, we could hear a different
voice, and it was a voice speaking in a language that we could understand. It was our language. It was like, wait a minute, wait. What? And so we scurried off in that direction to tag along, because there was a guide there using, he had a sort of a microphone and could broadcast a little bit, and you could hear him. And so he was telling the stories in ways that we could understand it. And so we began to follow the guide, and he was sharing, intriguing backgrounds about, there was this one tomb that was there, and it had a lot of very unique rocks that were stacked around. And he was telling the story of how this was a military leader who had been able to lead his men into a very particular battle that was crucial to the independence of Argentina, and how his son had come back and taken rocks from that mountain and had created this tomb, and a lot of the stories behind it. It was just like, oh, I get it, right? I mean, what a cool story. And of course, it only became evident when we were willing to first find someone who spoke our language. And then we were willing to kind of go seek them out and find where they were and be able to see that, oh, there's more to this, right? There was more to these creative grave markers. We saw through the lens of a story, of a narrative that gave meaning and actually sparked our interest. Suddenly, our energy level was going back up, and our interest was up because we had a curiosity. And curiosity is so motivating, right? And we were able to kind of now see the images that we were walking through, and see that there was stories behind these people's lives and behind the design of these places, and knowing the story behind it, boy, it changed everything. And this is similar. C.S. Lewis once said, "Miracles are a retelling in small letters of the very same story which is written across the world in letters too large for some of us to see. They're reminders, they're prompts to go, oh yeah, right? And that's what was happening to us. There was this, oh yeah, there's so much more to the story. And there's so much more behind these people and these structures, right? And there's more behind the story of you. There's more behind the story of the people that you teach or that you work with. And that's part of our challenge as educators and as people, is having the humility to want to listen, having the curiosity to want to learn more and recognize that what we know and our perspective is so finite, is so very, very limited, right? Every day starts with a new page, right? A new page where our own story gets to be written, and we get to decide what goals we achieve. We get to decide our resilience in facing obstacles. We know those obstacles are inevitable, especially in schoolwork, because there's just always something that's coming up. But we get to choose as well how we bless those that we meet in this journey. What a privilege that is. Storytelling is crucial. It's crucial to our well-being. It's crucial to our faith, enabling us to truly understand this life, to understand our purpose here and why we're here and where we're going, and then also to serve as a wise guide for those who follow our lead. And that's the real responsibility of educators. We have to recognize that so often our influence, it lasts not only for years, decades, sometimes and often generations. Your influence matters. It matters a lot, and it has a lasting impact. So recognizing that, it's important to have a consciousness, to have a curiosity, and to have a commitment around how we write our story, right? There's always a greater story if we stop to listen and if we can sustain that genuine curiosity. Your story matters. Your story continues this week, my friend. So craft a narrative that most accurately reflects your purpose and connection to the greater story, because it's there. Hey, thank you again. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your willingness to not only write your own story, but contribute well to the story of others, to elevate their perspective, to remind them of who they are, to help them see themselves through that greater story. That's the work, the ministry, the privilege of those who serve in various roles in education. And wow, it's life-changing. We get to, our work literally changes the lives of others. And that's a real responsibility, of course. It's not a game. It's something that we have to, it creates a pressure in the sense that we have to be ready. We have to be ready for the moment every day. And sometimes it's a challenge to be able to bring that energy. We're going into the latter part of this calendar year, or moving into where we're going to be celebrating a lot of holidays and seasons, and there's a lot of disruptions and eruptions, and we have to be able to sustain our story. You get to write it. And so as you go through this day, this week, I encourage you to think about this coaching question, right? Did I do my best to learn the greater story today? Did I do my best to learn the greater story today? Those graveside moments, those moments that just make such a difference. You get to shape them. Thank you for what you do, and continue to lead with that courage and strength. You are a blessing, my friend. Love them and lead them. This is Scott.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast, and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.